to Gandhi, you were mentioning when Gandhi was in South Africa and the way that that kind of molded him. And I have been to South Africa, I've trained activists there, and a lot of young activists in South Africa are a little bit upset with Gandhi at the moment and pretty suspicious of him, saying that when he was there, he put the rights of the Indian class in South Africa above that of the Black South Africans. And I hear a lot of young, even American organizers kind of labeling Gandhi and saying he was a racist. And so I'm curious what you would say to people who have that opinion of Gandhi or hold, maybe mistakes that he had earlier on in his life against him and kind of throw out the baby with the bathwater. Any thoughts or reflections?
No, I'm glad you answered that important question because it is on many people's minds. So first of all, let me first give you the positive side. Have you heard of Albert Luthuli? He was the African National Congress president in the early 60s. And in 1960, he received the Nobel Prize.
Was it 60?
1960 or 61.
I've been thinking a different date in my head. Okay.
I think it's when he received the Nobel Prize.
Yeah, 1960.
Yeah. So later, Mandela called Albert Luthuli, who was a militant fighter for African rights, called him a passionate disciple of Mahatma Gandhi. Mandela calls Luthuli a passionate disciple of Mahatma Gandhi. And Luthuli was in 1948 in the United States. He was giving talks in various parts of the United States. One of these talks was at Howard University. And this remark of Luthuli is there in the Luthuli Museum in KwaZulu-Natal. It's preserved there. And he said there, referring to John Dube, D-U-B-E, the great, one of the founders of the African National Congress. You've heard of him. So Luthuli writes or says to Howard University that he had no doubt that Gandhi's efforts for his people, the Indians of South Africa, inspired people such as Dr. John Dewey and others to concern themselves with seeking human rights for their people. So yes, it's absolutely true that Gandhi did not directly engage in the struggle for the Black South Africans. But it is true that his fight for the Indians of South Africa inspired and gave an example and hope to the Black South Africans. Having said that, of course, it is true that in his early years, Gandhi was ignorant. He was prejudiced. I would absolutely disagree that he was a racist. He was prejudiced. He had absolutely ridiculous views about Africans. But every Indian at that time had ridiculous views about Africans.
And many people in the world.
And many people in the world. So I would absolutely say that to say Gandhi was ignorant, Gandhi was prejudiced, Gandhi was limited, absolutely right. Racist, in my opinion, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And of course, in 1908, when he was in South Africa, in a well-known recorded statement in Johannesburg to the YMCA, Gandhi said that he looks forward to a day when there will be a commingling of all the races of the world. And he mentioned the African race, a commingling, and you know what that word means. So this is in 1908 in South Africa. So yes, along with his ignorance and his prejudice at that time, he also had some remarkable visions at the time. And afterwards, as you know, Gandhi got not only the Indian government, but countries all over the world to fight as hard as anybody against apartheid in South Africa. So yes, all I can say to these activists in South Africa or elsewhere who have heard some things, it's so easy to discover something about somebody in the past and then label him just with that. But I would just ask people to study a bit more and get more of the facts.
Yes, and I go further than that. They have allowed the enemy of justice, the enemies of justice, the promoters of violence to sow poison in them. That's where that's coming from, as far as I'm concerned. And it seems to me that the biggest, that one of the large things that has to be said is that he was so racist in South Africa that John Dewey and others organized an African National Congress around the same time to stop the rapaciousness of the Boer British rules. And they adopted nonviolence as their major philosophy. And they also adopted the nonviolent principle that they had to have an ANC which represented all kinds of people. Mm-hmm. All of that from this Gandhi. I mean, that's why I say point blank, those organizers are being fed a spiritual poison to undermine their chances to organize creatively and powerfully to change the world in which we live.